my Savior come to earth, and to the humble go? Why did he choose a lowly birth? Because he loved me so. He loved me so. He loved me so. He gave his precious life for me, because he loved me so.
Before I was a mother, I thought I knew. I thought I knew what love looks like. I thought I knew the value of sleep. I thought I knew the sound of success. Before I was a mother, I thought I knew the beauty of a prayer, the potential of my joy, the length of my patience. I thought I knew the depth of art. The soul of laughter. The importance of magic. Before I was a mom, I thought I knew the stress, the worry, the beautiful torture of learning, the healing of peace. I thought I knew how to keep my head.
This is the third time, let's go!
I thought I knew how to fix my parents' mistakes. I thought I knew how to be a cool mom. Before I was a mother, I thought I knew. But now I realize I had a lot to learn. And you were teaching me the whole time, even before I was aware of it. You were welcoming me into the sisterhood of mothers.
A calling as old as love itself. You never grow out of being a mom.
You better call your mama if you haven't already done so, right? We love our moms, and we're so glad that you're here today. And we do honor all the moms who are out there. But you know, it occurs to me that Mother's Day is not a positive experience for everyone. In fact, I've discovered through the years that Mother's Day is actually kind of dreaded by a lot of people. Let's face it, sometimes moms are not the touchy-feely, sensitive, caring people that not everybody's the same, right? So the thoughts of Mother's Day for you may not bring up a lot of positive feelings. I've heard from a lot of women through the years who really don't like Mother's Day because somebody like me will get up here and we'll talk about, you know, how they're supposed to be a mother, and I don't know anything about any of that really. But you know, they just feel like it just kind of highlights their inadequacies. And then there's another category of people that I've talked about before that I think we really have to acknowledge this morning. And to describe it, I want to read to you from a blog by a woman named Amy Young. And I think I've shared this before, but I think this is important. She says, a few years ago, I sat across from a woman who told me that she doesn't go to church on Mother's Day because it's too hurtful. I'm not a mother, but I've never seen the day as hurtful. She'd been married, had numerous miscarriages, divorced, and was beyond childbearing years. It was like salt in mostly healed wounds to go to church on that day. Fast forward several years to Mother's Day, a pastor asked all the mothers to stand. On my immediate right, my mother stood, and on my immediate left, a dear friend stood. I, a woman in her late 30s, sat. I don't know how others saw me, but I felt dehumanized, gutted as a woman. Real women stood. Empty shells sat. I don't normally feel this way. I do not like feeling this way. I want no woman to ever feel this way in church again. And then Amy describes what she calls the wide continuum of mothering. And she describes numerous scenarios. Let me read them to you. And you can see them on the screen. To those who gave birth this year to their first child, we celebrate you. To those who lost a child this year, we mourn with you. To those who are in the trenches with little ones every day and wear the badge of food stains, we appreciate you. To those who experience loss this year through miscarriage or failed adoptions or running away, we mourn with you. To those who walk the hard path of infertility, fraught with pokes and prods and tears and disappointment, we walk with you. Forgive us when we say foolish things. We don't mean to make this harder than it is. To those who are foster moms and mentor moms and spiritual moms, we need you. To those who have warm and close relationships with your children, we celebrate with you. To those who have disappointment and heartache and distance with your children, we hurt with you. To those who lost their mothers this year, we grieve with you. To those who experienced abuse at the hands of your own mother, we acknowledge your experience. To those who lived through driving tests and medical tests and the overall testing of motherhood, we are better for having you in our midst. To those who will be emptier nests in the upcoming year, we grieve and rejoice with you. And to those who are pregnant with new life, both expected and surprising, we anticipate with you. This Mother's Day, we walk with you. Mothering is not for the faint of heart, and we have real warriors in our midst. We remember you. And I want you to hear the message very loud and clear this morning that regardless of your experience here, Northside values you and you matter to us because you matter to God and God values you. Now, you may not be a mother, but you can still be committed to mothering. I think we all can. In fact, do you realize that one of the metaphors that's used to describe God consistently in Scripture is the metaphor of a mother and children? Let me give you a couple of examples. Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 13. As a mother, God says to Israel, as a mother comforts her child, so I will comfort you. In Isaiah chapter 42 and verse 14, God says, for a long time I've kept silent, I've been quiet and held myself back, but now, like a woman in childbirth, I cry out and I gasp and pant. The most famous is probably in Matthew chapter 23, where Jesus approaches Jerusalem on his way to the cross, and he stands on a hill outside of Jerusalem and looks down at the city, and he says, Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who killed the prophets and stoned those who sent to you, how I have longed to gather you, your children, together like a mother hen gathers its chicks. But you would not. You were not willing. So what I want to do is I'm going to take a few minutes this morning to focus on mothering like God. And to do that, I want to talk about my mama, Dorothy Allen. Now, I have to confess to you that in 35 years of ministry, I have not ever spoken directly about my mom on Mother's Day. And I'm not sure exactly why that is. My mother passed away in 1999. And you know, there's not a day that goes by that I don't miss her and think about her. maybe now that I'm a grandfather, maybe I'm kind of to this point in my life, maybe I can talk a little bit about this. We had a complicated relationship. I think relationships between mothers and children are sometimes more complicated than the relationships between children and dads. Now, before I get into this, let me ask you, did you know that there's a website that's devoted to awkward family photos? Did y'all know this? It's awkwardfamilyphotos.com, and I encourage you to go there and to look. You'll feel much better about yourself after you do. There's a whole section of awkwardfamilyphotos.com that's devoted solely to church directory pictures. Okay? So let me show you a few of them, and I'll explain why in just a moment. Here's one of them. And somehow this seems appropriate for Mother's Day. I don't know. You get the idea of this frazzled mom and the kids that are not really happy. And so, that's moms, that's for you out there. Here's another one. And I don't know what was going on here. Man, somebody's really, really not happy, I guess. That's sad. And then here's another one. This one's entitled, "The Photographer Waits for No One." Okay? Now, the reason I show you that is because my family has one of these pictures. Not on the website, but we have one in our history. Here it is. Nobody was happy in this picture. Except maybe for my sister. I mean, I'm the one on the bottom left, and I don't know what was going on. I think they kind of caught us. I told my sister, she sent this picture to me not too awful long ago, and she's kind of like the family archivist now. And she sent this picture to me, and I told her this week, I said, I'm going to use this on Sunday. She got mad at me. She said, "This is a horrible picture. Why would you do that?" I said, "Well, it's in the context of something larger. It's just kind of to make a point. This looks like a mugshot. This is the Allen family mugshot. That's what this is." We actually did get a good picture for that particular church directory. So I think the guy maybe caught us a little bit early in our when we were trying to take a picture. My mother was a lovely person. Dorothy Nell Allen. She was a great mother. Here's another picture of her. This is actually, I'm not sure exactly how old she is. She might have been about my age when this picture was taken. This was taken at church. She's in the foreground. They're signing people up for something. I don't know, VBS or something. And is Robert Tipton here today? Anyway, the woman that's right next to my mom is Ann Metters, and that's Robert Tipton's aunt. I think it's his aunt. But that he would recognize that. I was hoping he'd be here to see that. My mother was not perfect, but what I learned about God as a child, I learned from her. Now, my dad was converted later on. I imagine he was converted when, probably actually before they got married. My mother probably said to him, she was this kind, I'm not going to marry you unless you're a member of the Church of Christ, and so you're going to have to do this and have a study and all that. So he was baptized. But my dad was a great man, and I loved him, and I owe so much to him. But my mother was the primary spiritual influence in my life growing up. And what she did is she showed me a lot about God, about what God does. And so what I want to do, I'm not going to go through all these just step by step in great detail, because we've got another speaker who's going to speak for just a little bit this morning. I'll introduce her in just a moment. But these are the things that my mother kind of showed me. When I think about God's love, she showed me God's love. I think about sacrifice. God is love, but He has sacrificed for us, and my mother spent her whole life sacrificing for us. My mother was the kind of person who, when you got down to the end of the fried chicken, she would eat the back, because she would fry the back, but she would eat the back because she wanted her kids to have a better portion. I think that's a great example. I think that's an example all of us should live in the church. When we're trying to deal with one another, we need to be able to look at each other and to sacrifice in that way and say, what's really most important here is what my brother or sister needs, what my child needs. It's not about me. She sacrificed all the time. She also protected me. I was born, y'all can look up these passages about God, but I was premature. I was 6 weeks premature when I was born. So for 4 weeks, I had to stay in an incubator. This was in 1957. Neonatal care, there was no such thing. If there was, it was in its very beginning stages. And every day my mother was with me at the hospital. She protected me. I was the baby of the family, and I was spoiled rotten. I mean, but she protected me. She was there for me all the time. I'll tell you, there was one particular moment in my young life, in my early teens. All I'll say is that it involved a policeman, okay? And I remember my mother going toe-to-toe with a policeman because her boy would not do the things this policeman was talking about. Now, turns out he would. And that's the discipline part. We'll get down to that in a moment, right? And that's all I'm going to say about that. That's a sordid part of my history. Y'all know way too much about your preacher now. And then my mother comforted me. Through life's disappointments, through the pain, there were some surgeries, there were things like that happened in my life where she was always there, always caring for us. I think about when it says, you're in Psalm 23, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. God is the God of all comfort, 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 3. She comforted me as I grew, and then, of course, she disciplined me. My mother was the primary disciplinarian in our family, which is kind of strange. I mean, there was no, you wait till your father gets home. No, that never happened. She took care of it right then, and I'm not saying you discipline the way you want to, but I remember one time I left the house without telling my mother where I was going when I was a little kid, and when I got back, I stayed out all day long. When I got back, we even took, our friends, we took canteens and backpacks and little army packs, not backpacks, when we went and did some stuff, had little food with us, and when I got back to the house that night in Tyler, Texas, and I was very young, second grade, first grade, my mother was standing at the door holding a rose bush stem ready to spank me. Now, she didn't, but she made an impression. In fact, I was still in my 40s, and anytime I left the house, I had a family of my own, I still wanted to call her and say, hey, I'm going over to, somewhere. But I mean, my mother showed me God's faithfulness in all of its facets. Now, what we're going to do right now is there's someone else going to share with you about the faithfulness of God. Judy Biddick's going to come up. She's going to give her testimony about how God was faithful in her life.
Hello. God has taught me so much about Him through the children that He entrusted me with. And I have, they're like these living, walking, talking parables to me because I can relate so much better to God and the things that He's trying to teach me. I have two children. So my second born was here in the first service. That's Karen. And she is a people person. She's like her dad. She's like Dick. She's a people person. She has taught me compassion, how to have empathy, that people matter, that we're made to be in relationship. And I love her very much. My firstborn, my son, Evan, he's my only son, and I love him very much too. But that year that he was 15 years old, that was the worst year of all of our lives, okay? Now you guys out there already understand why, okay? But if you, as mothers, haven't experienced a teenage boy yet, there's a lot God can teach you through them. And I just felt like I needed to control him, that he needed to be acting the way I thought he should act. Well, the more I tried to control him, the more he rebelled. He always had to have the last word. He was always right. He always knew more than everybody else. And we lived at this time on a military base in Japan. And so he was constantly in trouble with security forces. I don't remember how many times I had to go down to security forces to claim my son. There was a curfew and he would intentionally break it. Well, there's another trip to security forces. There in Japan, you could buy beer from vending machines, and he took full opportunity to do that. And so I had to go pick him up for underage drinking. It just kept compounding. And finally one day, I just said, I can't do this anymore. And I did what I should have done at the very beginning. I gave it to God. I said, God, you have to do something here. I can't do this anymore. You need to take control. And so on June 12th, 2001, exactly 1 month before he was going to turn 16 years old, he's at the swim practice. He's at pool. He's on the swim team along with his sister, and they're at the base pool. Well, he decides to swim the length of the pool, which is 50 meters, underwater. And in the process, he fainted. He passed out underwater, and no one saw him because he was already under the water. Another one of his friends that's on the swim team, Jamie, she was also in the youth group with him. She just said she got this overwhelming feeling that she needed to find Evan. And she asked the other kids, have you seen him? And they're like, oh, I think he got out of the pool to go to the bathroom. And she says, it just didn't feel right. She just had this feeling she needed to find him. So she's the one that actually got in the water and started looking for him and found him on the bottom of the pool. And they estimate he was there for 3 or 4 minutes, but she got him up to the surface. She got the attention of the lifeguards, and at this point, he's dead because he's not breathing, obviously. His heart has stopped, he's blue, but they revived him. And I thought, okay, we're going to do this. After that, though, it just made such an impression on all of us that life matters. These struggles that we're having with each other, this control issue that I have, isn't more important than my son. That we needed to pour into him. That we were both different people after that. Well, God used that situation to prepare him for his career path. He became, he's in the Air Force, he's a pararescueman, which in English terms, that means he's a paramedic that's qualified to jump out of planes, scuba dive, do mountain rescues, do all kinds of crazy things that are, high risk, high adventure. In the training, it's a 3-year career training for him. About 90% of the people that enter that career field wash out because they are afraid of the water. They're afraid of drowning in all these drown-proofing exercises they do. Well, Evan had the confidence he needed now that said, I might drown, but that's okay, they'll revive me, and I can sit on the side, while everybody's still working, I get to sit on the side and rest. And so he just had that confidence to make it through that program. And for me, it gave me the confidence I needed to know that, all right, God gave this child back to us for a purpose. He is in a high-risk career field. He's deployed to multiple locations doing really scary things for a mom. And I just now have the confidence that says, God has a purpose for him. He gave him back to us. I have to let go of that. I don't need to worry. I need to trust God. I just give that control to God and pray, obviously, for him constantly. But I have the comfort knowing that God has this. And so I kind of just want to reflect on the spiritual messages that I have learned through this earthly experience as a mom. First, this has helped me a little bit more understand the emotion that God the Father must have gone through watching his son die, and the fact that he was willing to endure that for me. I tend to read Scripture and not put the emotion into it. This has helped me to understand that emotion. It also helps me realize that, when I died in the water of baptism, I came out a different person, and I need to live differently because of that death and that new life I've been given. I told you a little bit already that I like to make plans. I'm a planner, and so I think my plans for me are awesome. Yeah, God doesn't always have the same view, though. And so one of my favorite scriptures has become Proverbs 19:21, which says, "Many are the plans in a man's heart, but it is the Lord's purpose that prevails." I thought, thank God he has awesome plans for me, and that his will prevails and not mine. I also mentioned, I've learned the value in just handing things over to God. If I feel like I control it, I tend to try to keep control of it. I've learned, that's a waste of my time and effort. Give it to God. Give control to God. And then finally, the valuable lesson I learned, not through my children, but through another 16 or a 15-year-old girl, Jamie, was that when you feel the Spirit inside you calling you to do something, act on it. If she hadn't acted on finding my son, this would have had a completely different ending. And so you never know what impact that message that the Spirit is telling you to do is going to have. It doesn't matter if it's sending a text to somebody just saying, I'm praying for you today. I don't know why, but I am. Just follow the Spirit's leading. And so what I want you all to reflect on out of this is it obvious to everybody around you that you live differently because of Jesus?
Thank you, Judy. My mom, what she cared about most was that I be a faithful Christian. I think she wanted me to be successful in life, but not at the expense of my soul. And so what I want you to understand this morning is that God, our parents, our moms show us what God's love is. We respond to that love. And then once we've done that, we begin to reflect His love. And so all of us can be involved in mothering. I want you to understand that God loves you so much. And by the way, moms, oh goodness, nobody's perfect. And you're not a perfect mom. And you don't have to be. You just have to be faithful. I encourage you all to be faithful. If we can help you do that, then after this last song that we're going to sing, if you want to visit with me, I'll be out in the atrium. Some of our shepherds will be out there as well. But let's stand up and let's sing.
My home, I'm just a passing through. My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally, and saints on every hand are shouting victory. They're sung the sweetest praise drifts back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore.
Amen. You are dismissed.